Cheesy the Podcast, presented by Just Cheesy Productions.
Hi there, I'm your host Fondue,
Cheesy here.
and we're celebrating National Goat Cheese Month.
Goat cheese.
We're going to talk about the origins of goat cheese, a plague,
Oh, no.
and the possible halloumi shortage.
Aw.
We're going to discuss a cheese sweepstakes, and we're going to find out if dogs can eat goat cheese.
Woof, woof.
And of course, no episode would be complete without our very cheesy joke.
Joe.
Stay tuned for episode 143, Goat, on Just Cheesy, the podcast. According to nationaltoday.com, 9,000 years ago, goats were first domesticated.
Whoa.
They were herded by humans for their milk, meat, and skin. And here I am, challenged by pronunciation once again.
Oh no.
I'm going to try it.
Oh boy.
Swanyon.com talks about the history of goat cheese.
Sure.
They say that goat cheese goes back to 7,000 BC.
Wow.
They claim that back in Egyptian times that the transformation of milk to cheese was a guarded secret.
Ooh.
And they say that an Egyptian dignitary had cheese in his tomb.
Wow.
And it was about 3,000 years old.
Whoa.
In the 1st century BC, we find that Romans actually were fond of goat cheese.
Really?
They cooked it with olive oil and white wine.
Yum.
And on National Today's website, they talk about 349 BC.
Wow.
Xenophon, a Greek historian and military leader, had records about goat cheese being consumed.
Wow.
And on the cheese website that I still can't pronounce, they say that the Roman Empire cheese was considered a luxury product.
Ooh.
And by 77 BC, the manufacturing of goat cheese was mastered, and they said it could produce no fewer than 13 varieties.
Holy cow.
And they had also invented a press, which perfected the draining process.
Wow.
Goat cheese is found throughout the world.
Yeah.
According to thecourtyarddairy.co.uk, India is the biggest goat cheese making country in the world by volume.
Whoa.
Goat cheese makes it to France.
Wow.
They say that this was in the 8th century, and this was because of an invasion from Africa and the Middle East.
Whoa.
And the popular legend has it that when the invading Arab army was defeated, they left behind the goats.
Wow.
According to tourism.vn.com, Chabachu is the cheese from Poitou. I am sure I am butchering this.
Yes, you are.
The website goes on to talk about the origin of the name Chabachu.
Okay.
They say there's two opposing hypotheses. Either the word Chabachu comes from the derivative of the word chebli, which is the Arabic word for goat,
Sure.
or in the second hypothesis, the word Chabachu comes from or sounds like kabaku, which comes from the Latin root capra, which means goat.
Whoa.
In either case, it was about 1782 when Chabachu appeared in historical writing.
Ooh.
This cheese is fresh or medium aged.
Yum.
Its taste is light, soft, and the dough is smooth and creamy.
Yummy.
And after several weeks of ripening, it develops a more marked aroma with notes of dried fruit.
Ooh.
They say here that at that time the dough becomes firm and brittle.
Ooh.
And apparently the French like to tell the story that when retreating, the invaders had to choose between taking with them their goats or their wives.
Oh.
And it sounds like here they reluctantly took their wives.
Oh no.
I'm pretty sure my French teacher is appalled at this point.
Yeah.
Again, back to the website sunyon.com.
Oh boy.
They say that there's a story that goes back to the 19th century.
Whoa.
That there was a cheese called Valençay, and it was originally shaped like a pyramid.
Whoa.
The tip had to be cut off before it was presented at Napoleon's table.
Oh, no.
And they said it was a thoughtful gesture because the emperor's host at the chateau was keen to avoid any reminder of the disastrous expedition in Egypt.
Whoa.
It's likely goats found their way to the UK because of Neolithic settlers.
Wow.
Goats seem to be a popular and vital source of milk to rural areas in the UK.
Okay.
They're nicknamed the poor person's cow
Uh-huh.
because they're able to live off not much forage from rough scrubland, which is eating leaves and twigs and weeds.
Oh, yeah.
And they produce a small volume of milk, which is about 2 to 4 liters a day.
Whoa.
Goats require less feed than a cow,
Yeah.
and they can apparently be milked for a longer period, which is about 2 or more years.
Whoa.
They obviously don't take up as much space,
Oh.
and they need a lot less land for grazing.
Right.
They say there's not a lot of documented evidence about the UK and goat cheese. cheese.
Okay.
It's more than likely the amount of milk that was given by a goat would be just enough for a household.
Oh, yeah.
And that they more than likely would drink a lot of the milk and not have any surplus in order to make cheese.
Right.
And apparently it wasn't until 1979 that goat cheese became popular in the United States.
Whoa.
We covered this a long time ago, but
Yep.
Laura Chanel of Sonoma, California is credited with introducing the idea of high-quality domestic goat cheese in 1979.
Whoa.
And she learned her techniques in France.
Wow.
Goat cheese is not a sponsor,
No.
but when they are, the ad will go right here. Have you ever wanted to listen to the web?
Yeah.
Well, Newsly makes that possible.
They do?
They're an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android.
Super app.
You can listen to trending articles on the web on topics that you choose and get them read to you in a natural human voice.
What kind of topics?
Sports,
Cheese?
tech, business, science.
Cheese?
I'm sure there's even cheese.
Yay.
They even have an entire section for podcasts.
Are we there?
Of course we are.
Ooh.
It's one of my new favorite podcast apps. They even have digital radio.
Holy cow.
Just go to www.newsly.me to download it free.
Whoa.
Or use the link in the description. If you use the promo code CHEESY,
Cheesy.
that'll get you 1 month free premium subscription.
Yay. Newsly.
Now, back to the podcast. Apparently, listeria was also found in goat cheese back in July. According to BastilePost.com, a batch of goat cheese from France contains listeria.
Oh, no.
There's a link to BastilePost.com in our show notes, and it talks about the lot number that was impacted.
Check it out.
If listeria is not bad enough,
Yeah.
let's talk about a goat plague.
Oh, no.
According to Euronews.com, feta could be in peril.
Oh, no.
According to this article, back on the 11th of July in Thessaly, Greece, there is a highly contagious plague that quickly spread to affect several farms in Romania also.
What?
It prompted authorities to cull 58,000 sheep and goats in response.
Aw.
The article goes on to say that about 40% of Greece's soft cheese is derived from sheep and goat milk produced in Thessaly,
Whoa.
which also suffered devastating floods last year.
Oh, no.
Greece produces about 140,000 tons of feta annually,
Whoa.
and they export about 65% of this.
Wow.
They say here that this plague is not what they call a zoonosis, which means it does not transmit from animals to humans.
Whew.
They say the milk and meat from affected animals remains safe for consumption,
Ooh, good.
but that they needed to cull a large number of animals to control the spread.
Oh.
And the symptoms are interesting.
Okay.
They said the disease causes depression, fever, nasal and ocular discharge,
Ew.
oral sores,
Oh, no.
respiratory distress, coughing, diarrhea,
Blech.
and even death.
Oh, no.
According to in-cyprus.philanews.com, there's a possible shortage of halloumi.
Oh, no.
Now, we all know this as the delicious grillable cheese.
Oh, yeah.
And the rumor of a shortage comes from a new standard that's been set. The Greek Ministry of Agriculture unveiled a revised ratio recipe for goat and sheep milk content in halloumi cheese.
Whoa.
They said from February 2025 to August 2025, the quota increases to 30%.
Wow.
So in other words, an increase of 5% since the previous percentage was 25.
Okay.
They say here that there's 4 key goals to be reached.
Okay.
They want a gradual increase in goat and sheep milk production with reduced seasonality.
Okay.
They want to limit cow's milk usage in halloumi.
Okay.
They want to enhance inspections and stricter regulations.
Sure.
And they want to strengthen data collection for goat and sheep milk production.
Whoa.
Whatever the truth of the information is, it's clear that they want to make sure that the cheese does not become a generic product
Oh, yeah.
and that there aren't shortages worldwide.
Nice.
It's time for my favorite segment.
This week in cheese.
According to recipes.leclercfamilycreamery.com, you can win free goat cheese for a whole year.
Holy cow.
A link is in our show notes.
Yeah.
But you have the opportunity to win 52 logs or blocks of cheese,
Holy cow.
along with the opportunity to win 52 blocks of cheese.
Yeah.
You also have a ton of different recipes that they have on their website.
Yeah.
Things like a strawberry goat cheese salad,
Ooh.
or a turkey and chèvre sandwich,
Yummy.
or even blueberry vanilla goat cheese French toast.
Whoa.
And lastly, we wondered if dogs could indeed eat goat cheese.
Can they?
According to BellaandDuke.com, They say that the lactose in cow's milk is reduced by the fermenting process of making cheese, but it
Whoa.
still remains relatively high.
Okay.
And as we've discussed before on the podcast, that dogs don't usually respond well to lactose because they don't have the lactase enzyme required to digest it.
Right.
They say that feeding a lot of cheese to your dog can cause problems like diarrhea
Ew.
and itchy skin
Oh, no.
and leaky gut.
Ooh.
They say here that other species like goat, sheep, or yak might be better for your dog, but if they're showing any signs of digestive issues, you should cut it out of the diet.
Nice.
There are some cheeses that they suggest not to eat at all, like blue cheese and brie, and they also talk about added flavorings, vegetables, or herbs such as onion and chives, which can be toxic to dogs.
Aw.
Please consult with your veterinarian if you have any questions about what your dog should eat.
I'm ready for a joke, Fondue.
Okay, how do you make a goat cheese laugh?
I don't know.
Tell it a bad joke.
Oh,
Get it? Tell it a bad joke.
that was a bad joke.
Oh, yeah, that was a bad joke.
Yeah.
And a little bit cheesy. Thanks for listening to Just Cheesy the Podcast, episode 143, Goat.
Thank you.
We'd love it if you'd let us know what kind of cheese you've tried this week.
Yeah.
Let us know on our socials or email us at info@justcheesy.com.
And stay cheesy, everybody.